Hello and welcome to our roundtable discussion about the early days of women's athletics at St. Michael's College as part of the college's 50th anniversary of Women's Celebration. My name is Meggan Dulude, class of 2007, Associate Athletic Director, SWA, and proud softball alum. I will be your moderator. We are joined by 4 SMC Athletic Hall of Famers, Sue Duprat, Kathy O'Neill, Pam Batalis, and Amy Molina. The first class of women was admitted at St. Michael's College in 1970, but women's athletics didn't begin in earnest until 1973-74 with women's basketball. I'll now introduce our panel, who each played a role in the early years of women's athletics at St. Michael's. Upon her hire in 1976, Sue Duprat became the first female full-time athletics employee in the college's history. In the beginning, she simultaneously coached field hockey, basketball, softball, oversaw cheerleading, and then later coached lacrosse. Sue won 327 games in 27 seasons as women's basketball head coach and was also longtime associate director of athletics in SWA. Kathy O'Neill, class of 1981, was a 3-sport star. Her field hockey scoring record stood for nearly a decade, and her career home run record stood for 24 years. Kathy remains the basketball program's career and season leader in scoring average and steals. She became the first female student athlete at the college to have her number retired and returned to her alma mater as head field hockey coach and assistant basketball coach. Pam Batalis, class of 1985, graduated first in women's basketball history in career assists and second only to O'Neill in scoring average and points. Among her many ventures since graduating was serving as president of the New England Blizzard, a women's professional basketball franchise in the American Basketball League. And finally, Amy Molina, class of 1993, a 2-time basketball All-American and 1993 Northeast 10 Conference Player of the Year. Amy's school record of 1,933 points remains one of the top figures in any 10 history, and her scoring average is second only to O'Neill's. She also graduated third in rebounds and assists. Amy later served as an assistant coach with the Purple Knights. All right, welcome to everyone. Let's get started with the very beginning. Sue, you were hired in 1976. What was the perception of women wanting to compete in college sports at that point?
Well, it was a little mixed because I think we had folks from outside the area who, back then, you self-selected into sports. Your mom and dad probably didn't sign you up for, little 5-year-old soccer camps and stuff like that. Women really self-selected into things that they wanted to do. And at St. Michael's, it seemed like there was a thought that it's really nice that you girls want to do stuff, but just don't hurt yourself and don't expect much because you have to be out of the gym when the real stuff starts to happen, like the men's programs. There was basketball and then there was women's basketball, which we had to convince them to not call it girls basketball anymore. So while the athletes were competitive, and women and men compete differently. Men compete by competing. They're competitive and they want to be successful by competing. And women tend to want to do that more by cooperating. And that's sometimes misjudged as not being competitive. So I think, the days of when I first started there, we had games at 4:00 in the afternoon because they didn't want us out after dark. It's dark in the winter at 4:00 anyway, but you mentioned Zaf earlier, and Zaf was required to stay in the building until I left because, women, dark, bad things can happen. So it took us about a century and a half to change that thought, but that was from the top. From the women's perspective, yes, there were a bunch of people there who were competing and playing on the various teams because it was an opportunity for them. But most of the women were competing because they damn well like to win and feel some personal satisfaction out of their competition.
And Kathy, when you joined the team, did you feel that sentiment? Did you feel that there was support, obviously from your coaching staff, but from around the college and in your life?
I think Sue kind of was a buffer for us. So yes, I felt like, honestly, Sue really wanted to make sure we had the best possible experience that we could. That was in my opinion. As far as competing, I so appreciate that Sue gave me the opportunity to compete, because that's what I wanted to do. I am competitive. All of us here are competitive. There's not one of us who isn't. And, you know, it was hard to get that opportunity. And I think Sue was great. I will say she was the face at that point for us. And without her, I'm not sure I would have survived.
In terms of competition, what was it like at that point? Was it predominantly practicing and then scrimmage style in terms of the very early years, or how did obviously the conference, the way that it's structured now with conference schedules was much further out. So how did that all play out? How did you schedule games with teams that you knew were just being created?
Well, there were plenty of teams. We just weren't allowed to play them. So we ran regular practices. We had, my first year, I think we had 13 games on the schedule, which is pretty pitiful. And that was against Trinity College. That school doesn't even exist anymore, but a women's college in Burlington. And some junior colleges in New York, and like St. Joseph, the Provider, those kinds of schools who very local, because we could play, but we weren't going to travel very far because we didn't really have a budget for that. And while the men were traveling in transit coach buses, I was driving a van. I was driving a 15-passenger van until we got the people bus. Pam, you will remember the people bus? Everybody remember the people bus?
I also remember the van to Florida.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
12 of us.
Yeah, in a 15-passenger van, we were loaded
Yep.
up. I mean, they don't let anybody drive those anymore. They're really dangerous. And you coach, you drive over, you go over to New York, drive on the ferry, get on the ferry covered with ice, and you go play a game. And at that point, we started to turn things around, so we were kind of beating people pretty good. And I have to admit, and I confess, and I'm sorry, I want to apologize to the three women here with us, that I feel like Dean Smith. He was the only guy who could keep Michael Jordan under 50 points. And I did that to the three of them, that when they got too many, you sit down, just, you don't get to do that. And then I look at that, and I'm like, Molina must want to kill me. She should have had 2,000 points. And I'm like, yeah, no, we're not gonna do that. But so we played games. Nobody really, we had to get our own staff for games. You talk teachers and family members and stuff, and running the clock and stuff like that. I remember my first game at St. Mike's, I had to ask twice to get all of the lights in the gym turned on. So it was, and they didn't really want us to use the scoreboard, but we convinced people that it was okay. We weren't probably going to break it. So early on, like I said, we did play games. They weren't just scrimmages. And then we started adding games, like against real opponents instead of, not that they weren't real opponents, but they were even behind where we were athletically. So, but that took some, they didn't pay enough attention to us to stop us from expanding our schedule. That a lot of what happened was I wanted some more games, so we got some more games. And I forgot to ask sometimes if we could do that. And that was beautiful.
Yeah, as long as you were taking care of it. Now, I need to know more about this people bus.
Well,
It's
somebody
a bus that
donated a
transported people.
Yeah, and that's not even why we called it the people bus. So
It was a
somebody
cool
donated
bus.
It was a school bus. It was a short bus.
Yeah.
Go wherever you want to go with that. But it was a short bus. And somebody donated it so that St. Michael's could transport kids from North Campus to South Campus. And they ran that there. And some places they called it the drunk bus because they used to run the bus down to
Purple
Yeah.
Haze.
So I complained that like the van's a little tough. So I got to drive the bus instead. It was small enough that I didn't need a CDL or anything.
Yes.
But we call it the people bus because if you've ever seen one of those play school buses with the people in it, when you hit things, they all bounce. Well,
Yes.
that's what, if you look in the rear view mirror, that's what I could see is all these heads bouncing at different heights. Yeah, like that, like Pammy.
Yeah.
And there was no heat. And we ran out of gas only once, though. That was.
I was going to say, only once that I know of, that I remember that we ran out of gas. And it's important to have a very tall assistant coach who's willing to sprint a couple miles with a gas can. So
Yeah. And luckily we ran out of gas in New Hampshire, right near the exit. So Mike McGee, who was our assistant coach, our volunteer assistant, because nobody was going to pay anybody to do anything. He schlepped up to the gas station, got a can of gas and filled us up, and away we went. It was so much fun.
It
And a quick
go very
sidebar,
fast,
a little add on to that. This is how competitive we all were. Even Mike, where he comes back, he ran out to fill the gas tank, comes back, fills the tank. We're about to start out. We're all applauding him. The only thing out of his mouth is, ladies, that was a 6-minute mile. So you talk about competitive. All he cared about is how fast he ran the mile back to the gas station. We're like, yeah, let's just get going to Norwich or wherever the heck we were going.
Right.
So, no competition though.
No, definitely. I think obviously a perception that we still fight today is just this idea that women aren't as competitive. And I think that we have come a long way in tearing that down, but there's a lot of work left to do. What kind of perceptions on campus in terms of working with professors and getting this? St. Michael's is an incredibly supportive place, and I like to think that it's always been supportive. And so when women started at the college, the opportunities that they needed, from not having any women, obviously when you introduce them, you need to provide opportunities, and athletics was one of the ways that the college has done that, and it's grown over many years. So you were instrumental in that growth. What kind of experience, from the beginning of your experience at St. Michael's towards the end, what did that growth look like for you in terms of the experience for St. Michael's athletes? And then for all the athletes, what was your experience like at St. Michael's?
Well, for me, I think one of the things that you try to do is, I knew a con man once, and he said to me, great advice. He says, if once they like you, they'll do anything for you. And so you establish relationships. And yes, there were professors who did not want women on that campus. And there were professors and staff and a whole bunch of people who didn't think women ought to be competing, that it was just, okay, that's lovely, but you're not real athletes. And that's probably still true. That's probably still true. Now, the one thing about athletes, contrary to maybe some people's thoughts, they're pretty smart kids. They talk to one another about which professors do not take. But we worked into a way of getting lots of professors to work with us. So before they had faculty advisors and stuff like that, I had an entire working table, staff table of PhD psychology professors. Now, once they're invested, they love the kids, they love to watch them play. Our kids were always competitive and fun to watch. And so they got to spread that love as well to other professors. We had like a waiting list of people. We went through iterations. We had psychology professors, we had English professors, we had biology. We went through several of the departments to kind of spread the love. Now, I don't know what it was like from obviously the athlete's perspective, but it was, you establish the relationships. And then the backside of that is, it really helps if you win. People like that. There was a stretch where we were drawing way more for our home games than UVM was. So, I'm sure the women here can tell you about what it was like on the student end of that. But from my end, it was about establishing relationships and sometimes just not taking no for an answer.
I can
Your
chime
turn,
in
girls.
from a player's perspective. I think for us, it was just taking Sue's ability to lead by example to the next level, right? So, and I always look at, you look at your competition, right? So for us, I always looked at the male players, the men's basketball team, right? And you figure out pretty early to compete. I need to do what they're not doing, right? So a lot of us took 8 a.m. classes. We were never late. So kind of setting that expectation that you can do it all on a small campus, and really trying to lead by example. And, kids that didn't travel the night before weren't in class, but there were those dang women's basketball players. They seemed to make it to class every day. Now, Sue would have our heads if we didn't, rightfully so. But I think, I don't know, I felt like, my teammates and I, we really took great pride in sort of outperforming the average student who didn't have the travel load, et cetera. And I think right there, that won us a lot of friends and a lot of chits and a lot of, just great respect from the faculty and administration. And that spreads like wildfire. I don't know, I found it to be a very, very supportive environment amongst the professors, but you had to earn that. You had to earn their respect and convince them and prove to them that you weren't going to take advantage of the situation because you had been traveling from Boston the night before and you landed in a snowstorm back on campus at 2 a.m. and had to trudge across and get to your 8:10 class, which we've all had to do. So I think that was part of it for me. I found it very supportive, but you had to earn it.
Go ahead, Kath.
I agree with Pammy. I thought it was a very supportive environment. That way, my experience was a little different than theirs. We played a lot of noontime hoop with them, but we did. I remember, we made friends with all of those guys, and they really enjoyed. And Sue, again, you were very instrumental in getting that together, and they got to know us, and we got to know them. I felt like it was a real supportive environment from that perspective of the professors really, being there for us and taking it to the next level for us. But I agree with Pammy, we had to earn it. It wasn't given to us, which was the way we wanted it.
Yeah, I think probably the luckiest person on this call as far as having a lot of the road paved ahead of me. A lot of the hard work about building relationships and establishing the program had been established before I got there. But I would echo that the relationships were huge. I came to St. Michael's with not a huge background in the Catholic Church. And found that the Society of St. Edmunds and some of the nuns that taught classes that I was in were incredibly supportive of us as a women's basketball program. And so I think that also, for a Catholic newbie, that was really pretty cool for me to see that. But I also know that also helped kind of our positioning on campus. And you're right, getting up for those 8 a.m. classes when the men's basketball team weren't in those classes was helpful. And then I would echo what Kathy talked about also, that Sue was just a really incredible buffer for us, that there were things that I noticed through my career that felt sometimes unfair about maybe some of the things that were going on with our men's athletes and our men's programs and not us. But I also know that a lot of that was tempered and buffered by how hard Sue and all of our coaches were working behind the scenes to make it work for us.
What is amazing about this, there's a lot of amazing things about this group, but that you all have had experience coaching after your days as student athletes. And that's really, it's representation matters, right? And in a time we're talking about this more and more, having Sue serve as not only a head coach for pretty much all of the women's programs at St. Michael's, but also as an administrator, to see that as student athletes, I can imagine, I know this was the experience that I had, that was a possibility and not really understanding that before. And I would imagine that as a student athlete, you had a similar experience in terms of coaching and knowing that you had had a female coach, and that you wanted to go into at least some aspect of coaching. And if any of you could talk about what that was like, either intentionally or unintentionally falling into the coaching side of things and being involved after your student athlete experience days.
You know what, I would like to just jump in here on this. Without question, I think, you know, having Sue as a leader is the reason why I got into coaching, and thoroughly enjoyed it. What's disappointing for me to see today, though, is there aren't as many female coaches out there. You know, it's being driven, certainly on the basketball side and in the softball side, it's being driven by men, and even kids want to play for men. You know, you see that, and so that's somewhat disappointing. I mean, that just shows you, I think we still have work to do in that area. We need to get, women need to have women coaches. They need that modeling. They need to know they can do those things, and we're falling behind rather than moving forward in that area.
So as a quick little aside, I'll tell you, I was an economics major at St. Michael's, and John Carvelis, who I'm sure all of you know, or at least by reputation, maybe.
Look at the smiles. Yeah.
was my advisor. And at the time, your senior thesis was a year-long course. And in the first semester, you figure out what it is you want to investigate, and then you really spend your whole spring semester working on it. And I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do it on. So when I met with him, he told me to look at the decline of women coaching women in college athletics after Title IX. And so I said, oh, I hadn't thought about it, went back, was shocked at what had happened. I literally went back to his office 2 hours later and said, why is this happening? I need to know. This is what I want my thesis to be. And it kind of launched me into my career in athletics when I started digging as to, you know, what's really happening and why are we losing these spots as women's programs become more advantageous, and also as the market for men's programs becomes more competitive, you double your chances essentially of landing that coaching spot if you're willing
Absolutely.
to come in. And learning more about, you know, athletic directors typically are men, and they're hiring men. As we see across, not just in sports, but in general, people hire other people who look and behave, act just like them. It's a comfort factor. And learning more about it has really launched me into my career in athletics. And so I completely agree with you that women need to be coached by women. And as you know, and as you mentioned, you know, young people are saying that they want to be coached by men because it's all they've ever known. And so you're comfortable with what you know, and we're losing those experiences, I think, in the youth area, and it's starting to carry over. And we are trying to make more progress in that. I think we're down in the 40% range, and that's a sad representation of what women in sports is in our country.
I think you could do one of these conference calls with Sue just about that topic, if you'd like to. Especially if she starts to tell you her stories about the Red Wing shoe salesman and the guy with the videotape collection. So for another time, you should ask her those questions.
I want to jump in and say that John Carvelis is the reason I went to St. Michael's. That his wife coached high school basketball at Colchester High School.
Yes.
Lovely lady. And I was coaching at Mount Mansfield High School, and we played one another. And so, lotta. I'm living in Essex Junction. John Carvelis comes up to my apartment. I don't know how he found my apartment, knocked on the door, slid a note under the door that said, "You have to apply for this job." I'm like, who the hell is this guy? You know, turns out it's John Carvelis, an amazing man, just a wonderful, wonderful soul. And I'm very, very thankful that he found my apartment that day. It was really, really good. But Title IX was a double-edged sword. You know, it gave, it forced, and in a lot of cases, it forced schools to provide opportunities for women. And along with that, there was, it was never going to be equal. Let's not kid ourselves. We were hoping for equity. We got kind of close. But as schools were becoming more, programs were becoming more competitive, salaries for coaches were becoming more competitive. And, you know, back in the day when I was in, they had invented electricity when I was in high school, but barely. And if you were going to coach, if you were going to be a woman, not going to be a woman, if you were a woman who wanted to coach, you were going to be the PE teacher, because the PE teacher coached everything. If you were a man, you could be a history teacher and coach boys basketball. And so women were tracked in that regard. And so you were like, well, these are the people who are teaching. And again, even at the college level, women were coaching 2 and 3 and 4 sports, and men certainly were not. They were coaching 1, they were full-time. I mean, that was my gig when I got there. I'm coaching 3 sports and, you know, cheerleading advisor. I really liked that part of it. I did those things. And the men's coach, whom I love dearly, he was the men's coach, men's basketball coach, and he had a full-time assistant. And that was kind of, as it kind of started to sugar off, where I talked folks into letting us have a graduate assistant in our program so I could have that woman coach field hockey, moving on. And then salaries became more competitive. I don't know if they became more competitive at St. Michael's, but in a lot of other places, it became, like you said, guys can double dip. They can apply for all kinds of jobs. And it's only been, you know, we still marvel that a woman's got a pro job in the NFL. I mean, we marvel at that, or the NBA, and you know, not just the WNBA. So it was a double-edged sword that as we move forward, we've got to make a more concerted effort to get more women coaching more women. That's simple.
You know what, we need a different model. We don't have to necessarily follow the men's model. And I think, unfortunately, you know, trial and error, hopefully, and you know, we're seeing it in society today. We need a different model in a lot of ways. And we need to be able to support women if they want to have families and still, because we know coaching is, I mean, it's extremely time consuming. You know, you live your life as a coach. There really is not a lot besides coaching when you're a coach. And that's a difficult thing to do if women have families, but there is a model out there, and we need to just start to use that model, I think. And we'll get more people, we'll get more women in it.
Absolutely. This is a great time to talk a little bit about resources. And, you know, obviously you need to talk about things changing slightly across your time. Maybe talk a little bit about what that struggle was like at the beginning, and then what kind of gains you saw over your time at St. Michael's with regard to, you know, resources for women, not only budget support, but, you know, in all aspects of the female student athlete experience, in terms of, you know, fighting for court space and uniforms and all of the things that play into their student experience.
Sue, can we talk about the uniforms?
You mean the bulletproof practice uniforms and the other? Oh yeah. Oh man. When yeah, we'll talk about the uniform. When I started, you know, there was kind of it was a mixed blessing, because Eddie Markey, rest in peace, bless his soul, he tried, but he didn't have a lot of tools in his toolbox for dealing with women in sports. I mean, he went to St. Michael's when it was an all-male school. He worked there. He literally was purple, in and out. And so he was trying to do the right thing. He just didn't really have the tools in his toolbox to know what was going on. So he ignored us a lot. And the good news is he ignored us a lot. You know, I know other folks, you know, folks who are in the Metro Boston area, or the, you know, Connecticut area, it was an active fight to get things. like I said, if you ignore me, I'm probably going to go try to do things until you slap me on the wrist. And there were point, I didn't know that I shouldn't be asking for those things. And sometimes they just didn't ask. We just did stuff. You know, we started with like no budget, no scholarship money, no recruiting budget. The uniforms, Eddie ordered practice and game uniforms. And oh, we had a locker room. And in the locker room, they put separate change areas for the women with curtains, so that, you know, God forbid, you couldn't, and separate showers. You couldn't have a gang shower, and you couldn't change, and you had to go into the little. I'm like, nobody's going to use those. Like, but that's what he had to do. But so he ordered these uniforms, and they had to have quarter sleeves, and the practice uniforms were reversible, Champion 100% cotton. And they were reversible in the sense that they were two shirts like sewn together. So once you sweat in them, they weighed about 30 pounds. We did resistance training before resistance training was popular.
Yep.
We invented it almost. And it was like, and when Kathy alludes to those, the bright yellow and purple, we look like the Lakers because we played in gold at home. Except we had the long sleeve. And literally it was this heavy polyester uniform that we was jokingly called them bulletproof. I'm not sure we were far from accurate. So he meant well. I just said, after that, I was like, could you just have the salesman come talk to me and we'll work through some of these things? But it took us a while because they not only were bulletproof, they were indestructible. So yeah, them puppies ain't going to wear out anytime soon. I mean, I bet you could find some now that you could still, you couldn't talk anybody into wearing them. But I got to tell you one thing, it was better when I had recently, you know, when I started at St. Michael's, I'd only left UVM a couple of years before that. We were wearing kilts. So thank God, you know, and everybody thought when we played on the road, everybody thought UVM was the Catholic school, University of the Virgin Mary, probably. But because we wore these kilty things. And at St. Mike's, the Catholic school, our guys like, I don't know what to order, so give them uniforms with shorts. Like, yes, please, thank you very much. So no budget, no recruiting budget, no scholarship budget. We went years and years before we had a woman on full scholarship. We split scholarships because the only thing we could do, and to try to encourage more kids to come. And resources were, but men's basketball was already pretty established. So there were a lot of men's sports that didn't get fully funded either. So, you know, there were some folks at St. Mike's who thought the only thing that should happen is men's basketball there for the longest time. So we had a lot of men's sports who weren't getting funded very well either, with, you know, certainly no full-time coaches, no budget, you know, all of those things. Women, you know, the overall feeling at the time seemed to have been, from the administration, was don't make a lot of waves, make sure your kids graduate, bring kids in who will graduate, have a little fun, that'll be lovely. And over the few years, we started to get some scholarships, we get some full scholarships. So I got to a point where I said, I am not driving. It's not safe for me to drive after a basketball game and get home at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm a little emotional when I coach. I get a little involved and I'm exhausted after a game. And then I'm going to get into a 15-passenger van and drive from Rhode Island to Vermont, hoping there's no snowstorm, and get home at 2 o'clock in the morning. Made no sense. And so it took us a while for that to happen. And then when our men's program joined the Mideast Conference, it was like Pennsylvania and schools like that before we joined the Northeast 10. There was no room for women's programs in that. So we were still an independent until St. Michael's joined the Northeast 10. And then for a lot of years then, because, you know, Eddie, love him to death, would only hire Vermont basketball officials to cover our games. And they were terrible. And mostly they were terrible because they were guys he knew. And what they knew was men's basketball. And the rules are different. They're very different.
Yeah.
And when I would complain about that, I'd get a technical foul. Eddie doesn't like technical fouls. So I get chewed at a little bit, but I'm getting frustrated. And that didn't change until the Northeast 10 women's coaches said to their ADs, we will not go to St. Michael's anymore if you don't get them to use ECAC officials. So no matter what I did, it wasn't working. But those other ADs are like, dude, come on, I'm sending, because we still played double headers at the time. So they were sending their women's team and their men's team, not in the same bus like we did. They all came separate buses, but we traveled, but whatever. And that's how we got ECAC officials assigned, because the women's coaches wouldn't come anymore. They're like, man, those guys are terrible. They would call 10-second backcourt. No, there's no 10 seconds. I mean, it was really frustrating. And there are times when I think I didn't fight hard enough or loud enough. That I'm not a foot stamper. I'm going to do my job. I'm going to go into your office and close the door, and we're going to talk about it. I'm going to try to get you to see my way. But then I'm going back out to the gym and I'm going to work with my kids. Because that's what you do. I'm not going to stage a protest. I'm not going to write a letter to the editor, that kind of stuff. But really watching the increase in resources, it happened late in my career when we got really good stuff, in terms of finances and the ability to have an assistant coach, a full-time assistant coach, and then a graduate assistant on top of that, which was really awesome. And then, of course, everything went to hell in a handbasket financially, and they started cutting again. But it was, you try to not let that affect the experience that the kids had, because, that's the whole deal. It's about what kind of experience the kids are going to have. And if I continue to crab to them about what we're not getting, they get to crab about it. And I'm not interested in that. That doesn't change anything. So I'm really thankful that St. Michael's is in a spot now where it seems, as best they can, things are really on the uptake for our women athletes and all the athletes in that regard. But obviously the athletes here can tell you what that was from their perspective. But yeah, it was tons of fun, and never let Eddie Markey order your uniforms for you.
Some of my favorite experiences as an athlete are sort of, those moments or those experiences that unite you, that are sort of galvanizing as a program, that maybe aren't about the resources that you got. You talk about the lovely, hoping that they have a lovely experience. I love that because it seems so perfectly fitting. But I think about the resources, as a softball student athlete, we fundraise for our trip to Florida every spring break. And some of my favorite memories are ones when we were in a rent-a-wreck van. Like that was the name, that's what it was, and that's what was necessary. And we had great experiences and so many fun jokes about those experiences. I'd love to hear if any of you have any of those fun experiences you remember as a student athlete, that maybe it was around limited resources, but that created an experience that is so memorable even to this day.
Yeah, a ton. But this is going out on social media, right? So we kind of need to be careful about what exactly we share. But I think for me, during my time, it was definitely, the positive side of going to St. Mike's, in my opinion, it's both positive and negative. You're going to spend a lot of time on the road. Everyone else that you play and everyone else in the conference is a minimum of 4 hours away, right? But because of that, you got to spend an inordinate amount of time with your 11 sisters and mini mom and folks. So you really built a family, and 90% of my memories when I think back are road trip memories. And all different kinds of things that happened each year, the 4 years. And then I had the good fortune of spending 3 of my 4 summers on campus, living with my teammates, painting dorms, working camps for Sue, just making ends meet, trying to earn that meal card from Mr. Markey, and slide in a couple extra classes so I wouldn't have to get up at 8 a.m, my senior year and do a photo J lab or whatever, right? So, but all of those memories for me, so many of them are on the road, and I wouldn't want to implicate anybody at this point in their lives. So, but all great memories. Because we had to be on the road so much,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I agree. I remember Sue taking us to Canada, and I remember Maura talking about her eyeballs drying out.
She had to sit in the front seat of the van.
Oh, Kathy, was that the same trip to Canada we were going up? Were you the assistant coach or were you playing?
One time I was playing. I was the assistant coach, but I just remember Maura was so mad at Sue, and we're freezing out back, and we're like, "Oh, you gotta." So we had a lot of those kind of fun little competitive arguments, I think. But without question, I agree with Pamela. It was the whole family thing. That was my family. I mean, I loved everybody I played with. I still keep in touch with significant number of my teammates, and so that says a lot,
Yeah, I would agree that certainly I remember games and I remember practices. I seem to remember those January 1st practices a little bit differently for some reasons. But the same thing with travel. How many of our teammates, because we had to have 3 to a room, ended up sleeping on those little foldable cots, and how many times somebody got closed up in a foldable cot.
It happens. It happens. It happens
Yeah.
a lot more than you think.
Yeah, I was on one of those people buses crossing the ferry when the wave. Actually, what Sue said was, "Please don't get off the bus." And we all said, "Sue, can we get off the bus?" And she said, "Well, whatever you do, don't get wet." It didn't work out so well.
Yeah.
I just remember Karen Monahan stepping off of the bus right as a huge wave came over the bow of the ship, and we all got soaking wet. And then there was a big plan about how we got back on the bus without Sue knowing we were all soaking wet. So that was, the people bus was definitely not a huge part of my career, but it was definitely early on. And then the other part that I think winter athletes all either love and hate, or at the same time, would be that winter break when we're all on campus. We're the only ones on campus. No matter what our coaches did to try to keep us very busy, there was still a lot of downtime that ended up to be a whole lot of fun. Sledding on campus using the carts from Alio, just the talks, the fun. I think that's actually where we became closer as teammates, for those breaks where there was just literally us against the elements sometimes.
Yes.
Or us against the closing clock at Le Club, but that's a whole nother Zoom call. That's a whole nother Zoom call.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Our escapades closing Le Club. The good news is they served breakfast at 3. The bad news was you were going right to practice from breakfast. So there were some issues,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I know.
And the coaches had no idea either. Yeah,
None.
No.
Nope.
None. Zero.
Nope.
Well,
So we thought we had Sue convinced. Well, one of my teammates, who shall remain nameless, and I tended to enjoy dancing. I was a DJ when I was on campus. There was, quote, a disco. You're way too young, Megan. Anyway, there was this thing called a disco in Winooski called Le Club. I would spin there late at night on certain nights. So I was a DJ on campus. So I got to do kind of these gigs around, right? And of course the team would follow, right? Or most of the team would follow. And it would just be kind of, unfortunately, a little crazy escapade. But our dancing would get a little physical because, again, we were very competitive. So myself and one of my teammates would constantly be grilled by Sue every day in practice. How'd your knees get bruised? Pammy, how'd your knees get bruised? I'm like, geez, I don't know. It must be all the diving for the ball I do for you, Sue. just chewing through people. But it literally would happen on the dance floor at this club. It was just hilarious. And we just had way too much energy for our own good. Thank God we could pull it all off because it created some amazing memories that particular teammate and I still talk about, given we both now suffer from severe knee problems that we directly correlate to our dancing at the club. So talk about a bonding experience. There you go.
Right.
So
Even years later.
yeah, neither one of us dances or runs anymore because of that. So there you go.
But you've got the memories that'll sustain.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's lock. I mean, we could not talk for months and then we pick right up where we left off, finishing each other's sentences. So it's pretty cool. It's special. It's really, really special.
One of the things that happened during winter break early on, well, quite a while on, is during winter break, Eddie wouldn't have the heat turned on in the gym. So you saw the assistant coaches had parkas on while they were coaching because they weren't running around like the kids. I don't even know we could get kids to sweat because they would just freeze. You know, the kids, you see the kids, the chairs would be up because once they set up for games, they leave the chairs up and everything. So on the bench. And so the kids would be sitting there and there would be like random coats on the chair so that kids could wrap up and warm up. You're like, could we have a little heat? You know, it was like, well, the men are, because the men were gone somewhere. They were going to a Christmas tournament or something, which we couldn't go to. When the men came back, the heat went on. That was lovely.
No one wanted to sit on those metal chairs, I would imagine.
No fun, zero fun.
And Sue, how about all the excuses like being stuck in the elevator and
Oh, yeah. So, you know, you just got to love kids because they really think they're going to fool you.
Yeah. And
the problem is that one time that you go, I don't know, I think that's kind of a fib. They're probably telling the truth. So we had a couple of people, and I just, not that I'm competitive, but damn it, I hate it if you're going to get me. So we had a couple of kids who one time was late for practice. One kid was late for practice because they had to rescue kittens. Kittens. They were driving through Winooski and found kittens and they had to save the kittens. Yeah. And then, I mean, it was amazing. And so I finally agreed, I'm going to believe anything you say. I'm going to believe you. It doesn't mean you miss the consequence, but I'll believe you because if I don't, you're probably telling me the truth. And if I do, the rest of the team's going, oh man, you fell for that? You fell for there was somebody in a burning building? Really? You fell for that one? So yeah, I get stuck in an elevator and there was 1,000 excuses. So we're just like, you're absolutely right. I believe you. Run a few laps.
Hit the line, yeah.
Hit the line.
But we'd all get to warm up more than once. You had all of us warm up and run suicides until our late teammate decided to show up.
Yeah.
That was always a fun one.
Yeah.
Get you guys warmed up. Can get you guys warmed up.
But I have to tell, Kathy mentioned Maura, and one of Maura's best tricks that she pulled. We were driving the van, we were going to New York. And I made it clear, the van is leaving at pick a time, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, whatever it was. If you're not here, I'm leaving without you. Maura, shockingly, was not there. I'm like, we're going, kids. We're not going. We're not waiting for Maura any longer. We drive up. I get to the ferry booth to give him my money, and he's like, "You from St. Mike's?" I'm like, "Yeah." Maura said she'll be right here. Wait for her. So she called the ferry. He said, "Don't worry. We won't let the ferry go without you." I'm like, "Okay." We waited, I don't know, 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes. Maura shows up. Hi guys. Jumps in the van. Off we go. Yeah, that's one of my favorite Maura stories.
Listen, you got to praise the initiative that she actually called the ferry.
Oh, absolutely. You know,
back before smartphones.
Right?
Exactly.
How'd she find that number? Yeah.
Right.
One of the things that I think we coaches get a little too invested in is we think that our kids are going to learn things through the game that we're teaching. And that's just not true. Because we need to use the game that we're teaching to help them fall in love with that, because we did. That's one thing. But that's the excuse to get them to grow up, to be part of a community, a bigger community, their school, a small community, the sisters on their team, to be at the dance floor, to call the ferry, to do all those things, slide down the hills on the trays from Alio. That's where you grow up safely, where the mistakes you make are neither permanent nor fatal. And so as a coach, when you just kind of got to go, yeah, I'll wait for Maura, even though she's driving me crazy. Because that's the gig. Otherwise, sports really has no place in education. If we're not teaching more than the sport, it has no place in education.
Absolutely. Well, I would love to wrap up with just everyone maybe sharing some reflections on, obviously this is a 50 years of celebrating women at St. Michael's, and in a couple of years we get to celebrate 50 years of women's basketball, which will be very exciting. And so just reflect on your experience as a student athlete in the context of this celebratory year.
I guess I'll start, you guys, because I've been going last. I want to make one point, and I didn't know where to put it in any of this, so you can edit it into somewhere else because it doesn't really belong here. But for all the times where I felt sometimes where the men's programs were treated differently, or that Eddie was favoring the guys program over the women's program, the one place that I never felt that was within our athletic training room. And I quite frankly spent a lot of time there. And Zaf, I don't know how any of us put up with his jokes, but he never once treated me or any of my teammates like we were anything besides just athletes and basketball players. And that was true for all of the other people who worked in the athletic training room while I was there as well. So, I just want to point out that an athlete is only as good as the people that support them. And that is also, it's certainly as our coaches, but it's all the auxiliary people around us. And couldn't have asked for a better group of people during my time there. So I just want to throw that out there. The other part is I'm the person I am because of my opportunities to play at St. Mike's. That, like Sue said, the lessons that I learned, I learned a lot about basketball. I learned a lot about mindset and perseverance and being tougher than I thought I could possibly be. I use those lessons every day. I was working with a student today, and I was brought back to some things that, I learned in my time at St. Mike's. And so even 20, I'm not even going to, I don't know, how many, 20 something years later, I think I'm more closer to the 30 years at this point now, which is nothing compared with Pam and Kathy. But
thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
Appreciate you reminding everybody at home about the age difference.
I just want to make sure that we all know that we are representing the decades here too. So just pointing that out. I just, to this day, the things that I learned in my 4 years and my 9 years coaching there still impact me every single day. And that is sports in general, but it's certainly the things I learned from Sue, the things I learned from my teammates, and just kind of those natural lessons that you learn by trying to figure it out. And so I know that I wouldn't be where I am today, impacting other student athletes, impacting other kids, if I hadn't had such amazing role models through my formative years as well. I'm done. You guys can talk now.
Go ahead, Gav. Or I can jump in, either way.
I guess we can split it, Pammy. I still think it's funny, all of the things that I learned. As Amy said, sport is concentrated life, and I have to say, I used Sue's sayings like life isn't a bowl of cherries, Arthur Murray footsteps in it. And those things are true. It's obviously my career has, I was coaching and really loved it. And I took a right turn, and I feel really fortunate for everything that I learned from St. Mike's and my experiences there. I think it helped me to get myself back on a good path. And I love what I'm doing now. So how lucky am I? I think I'm one of the luckiest people in the world, really. I got to experience so many things. And the difference for the athletes today, compared to when I played, and really seeing it more, is it's more of a business today. I think when I played, it was, and we have to work hard not to make it a business more today than we did. When I was playing, Sue made me, I didn't want to play volleyball. I knew nothing about volleyball, and I tried to get out of it, and she wouldn't let, but it was a great experience for me. I mean, and I had an opportunity to really, I didn't have to focus on one thing. And I appreciate that today. I think when I was playing basketball, I was like, wow, what could I have done if I just focused on basketball? But I really am I think I'm a better person, and have grown a lot because I had to do all those things, and I didn't have to. I mean, I had the opportunity to do all of those sports. And I will end this by saying I really do, and I really do appreciate all that I learned from Sue, and that she did make my experience fabulous at St. Mike's. And I appreciate St. Mike's for giving me the opportunity. How lucky am I? Like I said, I think I'm very fortunate. So.
Yeah, and I definitely would echo that. I mean, I think all of us had such, I know I personally had a great experience, thanks to Sue, without her in that chair and serving as a role model and helping to point out to us all of the other role models on campus, be they female professors, administrators, et cetera. I think we're very blessed at St. Mike's that it struck me as, they were pretty supportive of women in leadership roles to some extent, maybe a little bit ahead of the curve. I just found I was very validated when I got to campus, regardless of what I wanted to do. Everything we were all involved in outside of basketball. We were very validated. So I think for me, when I look back, and it's just, I'm amazed at how far the school has come, in terms of the first 50 years of women at the institution. Like everyone, I feel we have a long way to go, but that's certainly said with extreme gratitude and appreciation for what has been accomplished. But I think for me personally, when I try to evaluate something, be it, the many career moves I've had, or, your career moves, your accomplishments, there's always going to be challenges. We were all blindsided and had lots of challenges during our time at St. Mike's, and that ability to be resilient. As Kathy said, I echo that, has definitely translated into my career. There's been extreme peaks and extreme valleys all in the same year, like 5 times, so that type of challenge and constantly poking at you to see what you're really made of. Do you have the character and integrity that you thought you had? I'm proud to say I do. And a lot of it was formed through and with and because of everything I experienced, in my time at St. Mike's. I really did hunker down and live there 4 years and 3 summers, and really tried to be a sponge and do everything I could. So when you ask, in retrospect, kind of think about your experience combined with the 50 years. And for me, the way I try to look at everything, be it a career decision or a personal decision, is I ask myself one question at the end of the day: would I make the same decision again? And when it comes to St. Mike's, I would in a heartbeat. And I think that's all I ever need to tell anybody. They ask me, would you do it again? And I don't even hesitate. And absolutely, to me, there's no better result in life that you have no regrets about your decisions. And St. Mike's was a real big one for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know what, I do want to say it because obviously I've experienced this. I appreciate the liberal arts education. I think that we as a society are moving away from that. And I like, I agree. We had to be a critical thinker. And I look around at who I'm working with today sometimes, and I'm like, they are missing that, but it's true, right, Sue? I mean,
Yeah.
So anyway, I did want to add that I really do think liberal arts is an important part of who I am anyway.
Yeah, the more we obviously are very engaged with alums in terms of so many alums are supportive of helping place current students into their internships or really just in their with field connections, and more feedback. As I think, especially maybe in the last 5 years, it feels like the feedback is we need people who know how to learn, who know themselves, who know how to think critically, who can learn the technical skills, because no matter what the job is, there are going to be technical skills that are related to that specific job. But if if someone knows how they learn and they're willing to think about things, those are the types of people you can put into any position and they're going to be successful. And so those are the types of skills that you learn at a liberal arts college that we are learning. And I think I absolutely agree. We need to do a better job of sharing those experiences and those stories in a way that makes up for the measurability, really, of the technical aspects of an education that I think that we all look for, knowing that when you leave, it's really about getting a job after you graduate. And I think that that's going to be the shift, right? As liberal arts are being challenged, that's going to be our job, is to really tell those stories about how important it is in life after graduation. So I completely agree with you.
So I think in general, I think what I'm seeing out there, like all the years, now of hiring people or what have you, I think what we're seeing yet another shift. I think in terms of that liberal arts education and the ability to problem solve, like you're saying, is becoming more and more important, because regardless of what job you have now, it's never going to be the same for long because of social media, because of the transition to digital. Everything that we're seeing in the marketing world, never mind the sports marketing world, is everything was events. On March 11th, we had to pivot. I can't tell you how many virtual experiences and events I've had to produce in the last 8 months. So overnight, we had to become, data analytics for our social media channels, overnight. And we had to get to know these sports properties that we sponsor on a whole nother level. That ability, that curiosity, that critical thinking, that if you just learned a skill, you don't have that. And the world isn't black and white anymore. I don't think career paths aren't linear anymore. And if the sooner folks realize that, I think the better, because there's nothing out there but change right now. The world's going to continue to evolve and change. We saw that on March 11th with COVID. So.
Yep, absolutely. I want to offer it up. Sue, do you have any closing thoughts? I kind of butted in there before letting you, if you want to.
Well, I can't imagine that Sue wouldn't want to have a closing thought.
I hate you. I have to tell you, when Kathy mentioned the liberal arts, it was our biggest recruiting pitch was the liberal arts education. Now, countering that recruiting pitch, we'd bring kids up for overnight visits. They'd come to the campus and stay overnight, and the parents would go to a hotel. And we lost one kid because at the hotel, mom and dad are watching the TV. Now I'm pitching the kid about the liberal arts education and why it's okay for a non-Catholic kid to come to St. Michael's. And the father comes in the next day and he says, I was watching TV. I just don't think I can send my daughter here. Like, what's TV got to do with it? I mean, I'm thinking, did somebody from St. Michael's get in trouble? Are they on what's going on? He goes, I turned on that channel 5, WPTZ, and their call sign, Burlington, Plattsburgh, North Pole. I'm not sending my kid this close to the North Pole. I tried to explain to him that that's a town in New York. It didn't work. The kid didn't come. But we made the pitch about the liberal arts education. She went to another liberal arts college in our league, but it's just like that was the yin and the yang of recruiting at St. Michael's College. We're close to the North Pole, but we got a great school.
Yeah.
Meggan, thank you so much for doing this. It was so much fun to see, as Amy says, the decades of the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. And I got all of them.
And it sounds
Nice to be seen.
I'll be setting up another Zoom to talk with you about the decline of women coaching and some of the stories that you have to share.
The Red Wing shoe salesman. It's a
Yeah,
good
I
one.
want to hear about this.
Happy to do that.
So you'll have to look for my Zoom invite here.
Absolutely.
Well, it has been lovely talking with all of you. We're going to use the word lovely in a really great context here to wrap it up. I so appreciate this time talking with you and sharing what your experiences were at St. Michael's, in the very early times of having women on campus. And obviously so appreciative of my experience as a student athlete was built on, the house that you built here, Sue, in terms of the women's programs. And I'm so grateful for the experience I've had that obviously it's led to my career in athletics as well. And so it's been really special for me to talk with all of you today about that experience.
I just want to also point out that your softball career was based on my softball career at St. Mike's. I went 1 for 3 in one game when I filled in. So just, I was a precursor of your experience there.
Well, I will also share that I'm a little starstruck. I'm going to be honest, Kathy, that when I was a student athlete, your name was literally every single record in the softball stat book when I started at St. Michael's. It was literally Kathy O'Neill owned everything. And
Except pitching.
didn't she play? And so it was really exciting to when Josh started setting this up, I was really excited to get to meet you. And the woman who finally broke your home run record played with me, and who, in my experience, was just the type of person who changed a game. And I'd never been a part of a program who had someone like that. And clearly each of you were that person for all of the programs that you were on. So this has been just such a treat.
Yeah, thank you. You know what? It's been great. It was nice to officially meet you.
Yes.
Virtually meet you.
Yeah, right, of course. And hopefully in a 2021, 2022 world, we're going to, especially heading into the 50 years of women's basketball anniversary, looking forward to having people on campus so we can really both have the platform to talk about it and then also to celebrate later.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Sounds fun.
We'll be there.